So this is not only my first time speaking at the Audio Developer Conference, but this is my first time at the Audio Developer Conference. So I'd like to thank the organisers for the opportunity to speak today. I'm sure it'll be a good day. So, welcome to my talk, Digital Modelling of the Roland RE-201. So this was a project that I undertook during my last year at university, which I finished this year. So a little bit of history about the RE-201. So it's a tape echo device released by Roland Corporation in 1974. It's the most popular and longest produced device in the Space Echo lineup. It's popular in reggae, dub, rock, electronic, and many other genres. The Space Echo lineup itself is an evolution of the Ace-Tone echo chamber lineup, which introduced multi-tap playback in the 60s. The RE-100, the first Space Echo device, introduced the tone stack feature, a two-band adjustable equalizer before written to tape, and the Roland RE-200 introduced spring reverb. The 201 improved the design of the RE-200 by reducing complexity and greatly improving reliability, which made it an iconic device. So, system breakdown, we've got three main systems that all summate to create an overall effect. We've got a tone stack, a tape delay, and a spring reverb. So the tone stack is a two-controlled tone stack which adjusts bass and treble. It adjusts the signal before being written to tape, which means it can have an effect on the tape saturation. We can also adjust where the distortion from the saturation occurs by adjusting the bass and the treble bands. The tape delay itself is a multi-tap tape delay, providing various combinations of three delay times. There's three playheads in total, and playhead 2 and 3 read at delay times 2 or 3 times the delay time of playhead 1. So here is the delay times and reverb combinations as per the spec of the Roland RE-201. As we can see, we've got 4 modes, which is delay only, and then modes 5 to 11 have reverb and delay, and then mode 12 is reverb only. So another control on the device is the repeat rate. This adjusts the delay time of the device by changing the tape speed of the device. Mechanical nature causes variations in delay time, which results in the wow and flutter modulation effect. There's also temporary pitch effects when adjusting the repeat rate. We'll talk more about that later. The intensity control controls the amplitude of the signal being fed back into the tape. Feedback. High intensity signals can cause the signal to feed back infinitely, causing warm evolving sounds. And then we've got the spring reverb unit. So we have a list of requirements, what we need in a model of a Roland RE-201. We need our adjustable two-band tone stack, capable of boosting and attenuating bass and treble frequencies. We need a multi-tap delay, matching the delay time and playhead activation spec. And we need saturation, pitch, and filtering modelling. And we also need some form of spring reverb modelling. So let's actually get onto it, shall we? So one of the most simplest ways we could model a tone stack is with bicods. You know, they are the Swiss Army knife of filters. And this has been done by a model by Downing and Terrason in 2016. Again, it's the most basic form, but it does work. Another method we could use is circuit modelling. So I am one of those people who says they've got an intuitive understanding of mathematics, which is to say I can read maths, but I can't do it. So what I essentially need to do is see what other people have done and see if I can incorporate that into my work. So EA in 2006 discretised the Bassman tone stack, which is from a Fender guitar amplifier. It's a 3-band tone stack, which means we can't actually use it for this, but I have done by essentially setting the mid control to 0.5 and using the treble and bass bands. So the benefit of this is that it behaves as a network. A circuit, especially a tone circuit, when you adjust the controls, it doesn't just adjust the band you're adjusting, it has an effect on the other bands as well. So if you increase the treble band, it might have a slight effect on the bass band. And the opposite is true. It's passive only. You can do models of nonlinear circuits, but you need to be quite good at maths for that. But you can also boost it in software after the fact. Another method is wave digital filters. So I found this paper from 2003 which discussed a method of using basic wave digital filter ladder filters to produce active shelving filters. And essentially what you do with this is you take the response from a high pass and a low pass WDF filter and you combine the outputs of that and you can create a shelving filter. And so the benefit of this is that it's active. You've got a more predictable response. It doesn't act like a network, which is good or bad for various reasons. But with wave digital filters, there are more complex tone stacks possible, but you do need to use R-type adapters and that can get quite difficult. So in my tone stack, I've just given you the option to switch between virtual analog and wave digital filters. So the tape delay, the fun bit. One of the most easy ways to implement delay is using the IIR comb filter. We use an IIR comb filter because it feeds back and we want a feedback response. To implement it in real time, we need to use a circular buffer. And we also need our delay time to be interpolated. And the reason for this is we are using modulation effects and pitch effects. And these are quite important. So we use a circular buffer with linear interpolation. In this case, we use 3 buffers, or I've used 3 buffers for each playhead, with delay times at multiples matching the real device. Now, you can use 1 circular buffer and have 3 read pointers, but I've found that this causes phasing effects when adding the signals back into that 1 buffer. So saturation, like any other nonlinear distortion, why not use a sigmoid function? And it does work. There's nothing wrong with doing it. But with tape, it's magnetic, and with magnetism, you get hysteresis. And that basically means that the current magnetism is dependent on the previous magnetisation. So it's not entirely accurate just to use a sigmoid function. Luckily, in 2019, Jatin Chowdhury created ChowTape, and this algorithm essentially directly models a tape device, and this can be used in our tape delay loop. So the static sigmoid nonlinearity works perfectly fine, and tape hysteresis modelling works too, and it performed better in listening tests. However, the hysteresis processor can become unstable at high input values, meaning feedback coefficients in the delay nodes should not exceed 1. Essentially, if you go above a certain level, it just doesn't work, and it refuses to make sound until you reset the device again. So with wow and flutter, what is wow and what is flutter? So in tape devices, wow is unwanted frequency modulation between 0.1 and 10 Hertz. And flutter is unwanted frequency modulation above 10 Hertz. Now in our case, we actually do want it, so we need to figure out how we can actually create this. It's caused by inconsistencies of the motor driving the tape, and it causes slight changes in the delay time, resulting in subtle but noticeable effects on the pitch being played back. So one of the simplest methods of implementing wow and flutter is something called a signal model. Essentially, we take a sum of multiple sinusoids, and the frequency of these sinusoids are at integer multiples of the capstan driving the tape. Then we also take white Gaussian noise and we filter it with a low-pass filter. And we sum that together with the control signal from the repeat rate. And then this creates these kind of trajectories, which are just variable. Another method is the trajectory model, and this is a physical model of tape transport mechanics. I haven't implemented this, but I have included a reference if you'd like to look into that further. It essentially directly models the components of the tape transport. Control ballistics. So we've got wow and flutter, but we've also got this phenomenon where if we turn up the repeat rate, we get a change in pitch as well. There's a gradual transition between the desired delay time and the actual delay time as the tape speeds up or slows down. And it results in a perceptual increase in pitch if the repeat rate is increased and a decrease for the opposite. So how do we model that? Essentially, we take our delay control signal and we apply a one-pole low-pass filter. So as you can see here, we've got our delay control signal here represented by a square wave. I know you wouldn't actually be able to do that because you'd break the thing if you actually did a square wave, bending it. But yeah, essentially we see that this control signal is smoothed out, so it actually takes a while for the actual delay time to reach the desired delay time. And these two here are just representations of playhead 2 or 3, where playhead 2 is at double the delay time of playhead 1, and playhead 3 is at triple the delay time of playhead 1. It's important that we calculate our cutoff as a time constant and not frequency. And this is the equation to do that. Just be aware that TOR is time in seconds. And I've used a time of 500 milliseconds. And we've also got this phenomenon of tape speed dependent equalization. It's also known as gap loss. So this happens on all tape devices. Typically you get tape devices and some of them will run at 30 IPS and some of them will run at 15 IPS. And sometimes you get the same devices that you can change the tape speed, and then the two different settings have completely different equalization. But with the Space Echo, the Roland RE-201, the tape speed is continuously changing. There's no discrete changes. So the equalization can be different depending on what your delay time is set at, your repeat rate. So the method I've come up with is to essentially use a biquad, take the repeat rate value and linearly map the cutoff of that low-pass filter based on what your delay time is. And then we end up with a tape delay processor that looks a little bit like this. We've got our wave and flutter here, and then we smooth our delay time using a ballistics filter. And then we've got our playhead outputs here, our feedback. We write back to our buffers, and then we just get which playheads we want based on what's actually activated at the time. And then, of course, we've got our tape speed dependent equalizers at the bottom. So, spring reverb. Nice little addition to the device, I think. One of the simplest ways we can implement it is just taking an impulse response and using FFT convolution. And it almost perfectly recreates the system being modelled. The impulse response is the definition of the system, but it's kind of cheating. It just is. And it can also be computationally expensive, but we do have packages these days to implement FFT convolution in real time with pretty low computation. So another method we can use is something called a waveguide model. Essentially, we have these things called waveguide sections, and it models the waves going up and down the spring. So we have a delay line going left and a delay line going right. We then use a scattering junction, essentially pushing the waves through the waveguides up and down, left and right. And this is my implementation of a waveguide, where we've got the junction and the reflections going left and right. And then we push the junctions back into the reflections. It's a bit weird when you look at it first, but the more you look at it, the more it makes sense. But then we need to use something called a dispersion filter, which I've just used 5 all-pass filters in series to get those phasing effect. And then we've got our output filters. And then I've just given you the option to decide whether you want to use convolution or waveguide. So I found that applying low-pass filtering above 3 kHz provided a good representation of the spring reverb effect. Certain mid-range frequencies tended to over-resonate in my waveguide emulation, and it's particularly noticeable on drums. One more method we can use is finite difference modelling. This is a mathematical modelling of a spring. And the concept is proven, but it's extremely computationally expensive, not really viable for real-time uses. So back in 2009, it took a 2 gigahertz processor 1 minute to produce a 3-second sample. So unless somebody has managed to crack that, it's not happening. So this is the plugin itself. I originally made it in Rack Effects, but I've since ported it to Juice. And thanks to Foley's GUI magic, I've come up with this. You can download the plugin, you can have a look at the plugin, you can change it, rebuild it, improve it. Just let me know what you've done with it. Take a look. And there's some references there if you want to learn more about modelling the RE-201. Thank you. Now, I do have an audio sample, a demonstration of the various aspects modelled. So I'll just start off with that. Would help if I muted it. So here we have playhead 1. Player 2 at double the delay time. Player 3 at triple. Then we have our multi-tap delay. This should demonstrate the pitch effect. Here's a demonstration of the saturation. Here we have our convolution reverb. Then our waveguide reverb.
Why
So, any questions?
Thanks very much, Jordan.
Thank you.
For the spring reverb, have you tried taking measurements of an actual spring for comparison or even machine learning purposes?
I have not, but I can.
Just curious, how you debug it? Meaning that you get some sound when you write code, and how you estimate that it's good or bad? Just QA, so you listen and that's the result.
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
How you debug it? Meaning that, I don't know if it works. If you wrote a code, you listen to sound that you got something, some result. How you estimate that it's what you actually modeled?
So I did some listening testing as part of my dissertation work.
But it's only perceptual, meaning that you do not make any comparison with a real machine.
No, I did do that, yeah. I can't actually share the results of it today because it's part of my dissertation work, but I did do some.
Thanks, that was great. I have like a RE-20 or 201, and I use it all the time. And one of the ways that I find a lot of people use it is they just put it in front of a guitar amp, and so they go in and out of it, and they don't use the delay, they don't use the reverb. They literally just use it for the filtering and overload effects and the drive on the input. So was that modeled just through the saturation? Or did you, when you were doing your listening test, did you do some testing to kind of analyze what it sounds like a dry pass through?
So, from the use case you've described, it sounds like they're just using the tone stack, mainly?
Pretty much, yeah. I don't think you can take that out.
No. So, I didn't model directly my own RE-201 because I don't have one. Essentially, it was a comparison between the Boss pedals, the RE2, the RE20, other plugins. And then finally, I did go and record. I rented one, and I've recorded some samples for listening testing. So that would be my next step, is to actually purchase one and then do.
Yeah, the dry lack of reverb, lack of delay, I think is also a very interesting tone in that unit.
Okay.
We have a question from. Thank you very much for the talk. I was just curious to find out if you experimented with any other interpolation schemes for your fractional delay, and if you did, maybe find out what kind of pushed you towards linear interpolation.
I haven't at this time. I've just used linear because it seemed to work.
Thank you for the talk. I just have a question for the spring reverb, because the convolutional reverb and the waveguide model sounded pretty different. Which one was actually closer to the original? Do you compare them with?
It was the convolution.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And what was the difference in CPU usage? Did you test that?
The waveguide is quite a lot better on CPU.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Would you consider maybe using a combination of both the waveguide and the convolutional model within the reverb? Do you think that would also maybe enhance, maybe have the best of both worlds, have the benefits of CPU usage in the waveguide model, and then the accuracy and the realness of the convolutional model? Do you think that would be advantageous in future?
Interesting. So I'd never considered combining the two, but that could have interesting perceptual effects. However, in terms of computation, I mean, if you actually need to compute the convolution anyway, you're not going to be saving any CPU. I mean, you'd be doing more because you'd be doing two lots of computation, but that might actually have some really interesting perceptual effects.
Yeah, I know exactly how you feel. Convolution is somehow cheating. Just stole your joke. If the scatter, what is it called? The waveguide, do you know, or do you foresee any? Have you looked at any like ways of improving that waveguide model, Are there any more complex models that better approximate spring reverb?
I think with the waveguide, it would just be tuning. The finite difference model would be very interesting to do, but as I say, at this time, it seems as though it's unviable for real-time usage. I think that the next step would be to use neural networks.
Sorry, could you repeat what was the one that was unviable for real-time usage? What's that called?
Finite difference models.
Finite difference models.
These ones. But yeah, I think the next step would be using neural networks. But again, that comes down to convolutional processing anyway.
Any other questions?
Hey, great talk, great work. Sounds really cool. When's it coming out?
It's out. It's out.
So
It's on GitHub, yeah.
Are you gonna make it a finalized commercial version?
I've considered it. I mean, I'd need a GUI designer, to be honest, I think. So if anybody's a GUI designer, please get in touch. But no, yeah, I would consider releasing it commercially, but at the moment it's an open source plugin and anybody's free to use it.
Okay. And you're thinking of making presets for it as well?
Yeah, yep.
Perfect.
Any other questions?
On the spring reverb, like normally if you have a spring reverb, it always acts a little bit like a microphone as well and picks up something from the surrounding. Did you try to emulate that? That it picks up from the tapes or whatever?
I haven't, but that could be very interesting. So it would, you mean the interference from the device itself? Yeah. Haven't, but that would be very interesting to do.
I want to ask, how do you simulate the parameters? How do you tune the parameters to simulate the RE-201 model? Do you just compute the parameters manually, or the parameter of the delay lines or other models? How do you make it similar to the physical model? Yeah,
so the delay time of the RE-201 spans from 50 to 200 milliseconds. It's variable, but that's the range. So the upper limit of the maximum delay time you can do on a 201 is around 600 milliseconds. That's on Playhead 3. So they are from actual measurements of devices.
Okay, so you measure the response of the RE-201. Okay. Oh, I also have another question. So can the convolution reverb work in real time?
So you've got FFT packages. I mean, there's one in Juice, a reverb convolution package in Juice. There's another one from a developer called Hi-Fi Lo-Fi, I believe. So you just use those packages, implement them into your plugin, and you've got real-time convolution reverb. Tends to be a lot more computationally expensive than using comb filter reverbs, but it does tend to sound a lot better.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thanks for the talk. It was great. Yeah, just a compliment from the developer of the first tape delay of the Logic, Inside Logic. So I also did the space designer to cheat the spring reverb afterwards. Regarding the tone stack, actually, if you discretize the tone stack, it comes out as a 3-pole filter, and one pole disappears if you remove the mid control to make it easier to implement.
You say, are you on about the bilinear transform?
Yeah, so if you use the method advised by DVDA, so then you come up with a...
So essentially what I've done is I've kept the mid potentiometer at the halfway value.
Yeah.
And then you've got the controls of the higher and the bass.
And then it becomes a 2-pole filter, am I right? Or
a 2-port filter?
Yeah,
a 2-control filter?
A 2-control, and I think one cap is snipped out, yeah, might be. Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting structure, but it's quite a daunting task to interpolate on that one. It becomes quite unstable if you don't do in-depth analysis how to do that. Yeah.
Any more for any more? I have one question for online. I'm not sure could you adjust the plugin and show the change in real time? I'm not sure whether that's a question for an extended demonstration or just how does it work when you automate the parameters?
Sorry, I mean the demonstration itself was automated.
Right.
They wanted a demonstration.
I think perhaps that's
okay.
Let's assume that the automation recorded on the timeline was exactly how it would sound in real time, rather than going through it again.
Okay.
So don't worry too much.
So just open a new project and get any stimulus?
I think if the automation was on the timeline, I think that probably suffices. That's fine. No.
Yep. So yeah, we've got automation of the various parameters there.
Okay. Thanks once again, Jordan. Big hand for Jordan.
Thank you.